Welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of The Pitch Podcast, brought to you by Alexandria Soccer. I'm your host, Katie Brooks. Each episode this season, we are diving into information about an ASA program with a behind-the-scenes look at the history, how things work, updates, and more. On today's episode, we are focusing on what is perhaps a lesser-known ASA program, international trips. With me today, I have Pedro Paiva, International Trips Director, and Tommy Park, Executive Director, and we'll have a few special guests join us later in the episode. As we know, soccer is the most popular sport around the world, even if the United States has been historically slower to jump on board. The ASA International Trips program was born out of a dream and goal to give kids an international soccer experience, where they can interact with and see how different cultures, countries, and communities embrace soccer. Each trip is an immersive experience of playing soccer, watching soccer, and experiencing food and culture in a new and exciting country. This program was really developed out of unique relationships built with and by Pedro over the past 15 years and more. So we're just going to dive in since you all are the experts here. Let's start. Give me a quick introduction. Who are you? What do you do at ASA? How are you involved with trips?
Should I go first? Yeah, my name is Pedro. I'm ASA International Programs Director. I've been involved with the club for almost 10 years now. We start this, we're going to talk a little about the history, but I was living in Brazil at that time, running from there, and the program was just growing, so much that Tommy pretty much just gave me two options: or we quit the program, or you got to move up here and run this. And that's been the past 2 or 3 years. I've been, working for the organization as a full-time and run all the international programs.
The international
and thanks for having me, Katie. This is fantastic.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love that the international program was literally international to start, based in Brazil.
Yeah.
Okay, who are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm Tommy, and I'm excited to talk about the international program today. Certainly near and dear to my heart. I think you asked about to kind of follow up on the origin of the program. As you mentioned, soccer, football is a global game, and for me, my first international experience was in 8th grade, and it did not involve soccer. Actually, It was a cultural trip as part of my school, and we went abroad, and I was at the time, already very passionate about soccer, but we had no soccer activity as part of the trip, and I was just like, what is happening? We're going by, all these amazing stadiums. And
What country were you in?
It was in Spain.
Oh, cool.
So, kind of, fast forward, my high school was very fortunate to be able to travel, to other various countries in Europe and experience a cultural trip that involved tournaments and watching pro games. And that was very much part of, developing my love for the sport and really for appreciation of other cultures, and a love for travel, really. So, into adulthood, and as I became involved with ASA, it was very much a passion of mine to say, hey, is there an opportunity for us to introduce those types of experiences at our club? And I reached out to Pedro. We actually connected very organically through the World Cup being hosted in 2014, and I'll kind of I feel like your memory is.
Yeah, but I got to say something. Even, you mentioned about 8th grade. I'm going to beat you about that. My first international, I was actually just a newborn. I was born in Brazil. My parents came to the States. So my first international experience going abroad was at a very young age, moving to the United States, so my parents could go to. And I think that's part of the that we understand the benefit benefits of the exchange program of going abroad, of every single aspect of that international experience. But going back to how we connect, I was working for the World Cup in Brazil in 2014, and at that time, of course, Brazil was the center of the soccer industry, and Tommy was already running. We used to work together at DC United back in the days, but we completely lost contact. But in 2014, he went to grad school with the same girl that was working with the same company that I was working in Brazil, Alicia Klein.
Wild.
Yeah, and he reached out to Alicia and kind of, we want to do like a coach education network trip to Brazil. And then Alicia was, I'm not the one that's going to be able to help you. I'm just pass you to Pedro. And then Tommy sent me his resume. I was like, who sends a resume to, and I didn't know, I didn't ring the bell that time. That was Tommy. And then I saw his picture, DC, was a bunch of DC United on his resume. And I was like, wow, that's Tommy. And then we set up kind of a Zoom call, and then at that time, Jim Hogan, Chris Arnold, Ryan Rich, all those guys that still work with the club, they were kind of walking around that Zoom call. And then that's how we start this. And then we host like the program actually started and was funny because we never talk about having like international department at that point.
Right.
Was really just taking the coach for like a coach education kind of network down to Brazil. And then we start to having the first conversation. Okay, how about bringing the boys here? And then we have at the first boys trip down to Brazil. And that was very successful. We saw that could be something bigger for the organization. And at that point, the organization itself was growing.
Yeah.
And more kids were like could be having the opportunity to go overseas and benefit for the international trip. And then in the following year, we had another group going to Brazil again, and then adding in the third year adding trips to Sweden and so on. And that's how we get to the point now having so many trips. And I think I was just doing the math. We are getting close to over 500 total players, chaperones going overseas
having participated.
Yeah. And we're already past the 500. I think we are getting close to the 600 now.
That's kind of hard to believe. I want to go back real quick to the first trip, just because one of our guests will actually talk about the first kids trip. But when you were planning that first coaching trip, and then you all went, and that's when you were learning futsal.
Yes.
What you were like, this is great. We should do this with kids. Like, what was that experience like?
Let me say that that coaches trip where we did a futsal coaching course was very influential in our eventual strategic planning of the club. We on that trip observed how the infrastructure in highly dense cities support play, and we saw how in the smallest pockets of parks and neighborhoods, the communities would find a place to play.
Yeah.
So that for us obviously became like, why do we not have multi-use courts? And today in Alexandria, there's more than 10. It was really a big part of going to a different part of the world and seeing how different communities plan and play. So credit to Pedro and the club for supporting that. Obviously, we also got educated in futsal and saw.
And then started a futsal program.
We started a futsal program, and obviously now today that's one of the largest in the country. So it obviously we became in love with Brazil, and at that point, and we said, wow, the kids would have an amazing time. And
we know
so
this
we
guy who can play.
I got to mention.
He was hosting
that
trips
was
with Australia.
And I have to say something that Tommy might not even remember. It's how we start moving to Europe. Because at some point, after the second trip, that was only boys, it was not open to the girls. And then Tommy came to me and said, listen, we got to do something for the girls. We have to do a trip for the girls only. That's how Sweden actually started. And because at that time I was working for the Brazilian coach education program, and one of the coaches that were there, he used to work for. He was a former player at this. He was a Brazilian guy that used to be a player in Sweden, and he was actually working. He still works for Manchester United, and so the initial idea, which is something that we're going to talk about, what I love about our international program, the initial idea was actually go to England, and that's why I reached out to him, because he was working for Man U, and then he opened my eyes about, why not? I mean, it's a girls trip. Why not Sweden? And that's how we start. That's how we discover Malmo, Sweden, all those new destinations, and we keep adding those different destinations, because something beauty about our program, as we try to we like to think outside the box, not just. So we do have trips to Barcelona, Paris, London, but that's not it's not, it's secret to no one that my favorite trip it's Malmo, Sweden. It's a destination that most of the families would never think about going there. And we had a trip in the past summer to Belgium, which was kind of similar, very unique towns and very different than those kind of mainstream destinations in Europe. But what I was talking about is the how we started setting up the trips. How important is to trying to find a specific destinations where we can provide our the ASA community a place to go into benefit for those being in the international stage, but at the same time being to a place that probably they weren't thinking about to go to.
Yeah.
Off the beaten path.
Off the beaten path. I have been on the Malmo trip. It is incredible. And that's actually a good segue. So our first guest today is Coach Anna, who some of our academy families might be familiar with. She has actually been on 2 international trips. She started with the greatest intro trip, Malmo, Sweden. And then this last summer went to Portugal. Was she on the Portugal trip? So we're just going to chat with her for about 10 minutes about her experiences. All right. Welcome, Anna. Thanks for joining us here for a few minutes.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're chatting about international trips today. And we just got a little bit of an overview of the history, how they started, a little bit of sort of why we run these trips. But we wanted to chat with you because you've been on 2 trips as a coach. Do you mind introducing yourself, telling us who you played for when you were an ASA athlete, and which trips you've been on?
Sure. So my name is Anna Flack. I've been coaching with ASA now for 4 years. When I played for ASA, I think it was 2014 and 2015, I played for Chris Arnold and Katie Alonso. She was Katie Reynolds at the time. And I have been on the Sweden and Denmark trip. And then last year, we did Portugal for the first time as a club, and I was on that trip as well.
Yeah. So when you were getting ready to go on that first trip, and maybe even Portugal, can you remember what expectations you had, and then sort of what the experience itself ended up being like? Was it similar? Were you blown away? What was it like?
I think I didn't really have any expectations, to be honest, because I had never really experienced that as myself as an athlete growing up. So I wasn't really sure, what it would be like and how well it would be planned out. And, but I know, Katie, we had a conversation before I went, because you had been on the same trip as me when you went to Sweden, and that was definitely helpful. We talked a little bit about your experience and kind of what to expect. So then I think once I went, I think anyone that you ask that goes on it is usually always above and beyond expectations. Pedro does a fantastic job connecting with other people and the other clubs and other areas, and kind of making the experience for not only the players, but like everybody who is a part of the trip itself. So
yeah, I love that. And I love that that was an experience that you had not had and kind of got to, or jumped into. I remember I was like, just go. It'll be great. And
I think you were like, honestly, don't think twice.
But that is an experience that I think is a lot of people can relate to, like maybe being a little uncomfortable traveling somewhere, not knowing everyone, not knowing who you're going to interact with, and who you're going to play soccer against. So with that in mind, what do you see, if you do, like a change in the girls? I know you've been on 2 girls trips throughout the trip. Do they become more comfortable, confident? What's their kind of, what do you see in them as they travel?
Right. I think for sure. I mean, I think too, being on the 2 trips back to back and at the same age groups as well, I think I saw a huge difference from year to year in the girls.
Mm.
But I think they definitely open up a little bit, well, a lot as the trip goes on, and not only with each other and some of the teammates that are in their age group, but some girls that are maybe not in their age group. They get to have that bonding experience too with different girls within the club. And I think even with the coaches and other chaperones who are on the trip, they obviously, tend to get closer with and rely on the coaches and chaperones as well. So it's kind of like a whole encompassing experience that everyone gets to have, which I think is really awesome. But then I think last year, seeing the girls, the same age group, develop again, like they didn't even need us there. They could take care of themselves at that point because they just knew what they were doing. So that was awesome.
Yeah, perfectly comfortable traveling in a foreign country.
Can I ask, can I ask a question?
13.
Hey, Anna, how are you? Thanks so much for taking your time to join us. I would ask kind of the same question, but in terms of the coach, what is your takeaway to being able to coach overseas, facing international games, and what do you take out of on a trip as a coach?
I think at first, definitely intimidating because not really knowing what to expect. And I think if I remember correctly, I kind of went in not even technically like being a head coach yet. So I think I was a little bit nervous. But once you get out there, like the other coaches, honestly, for the most part, I feel like every time we interacted with them, like they're like the same mindset as us, kind of to just embrace the journey and have the girls kind of be able to bond and get to know each other. And I think it was like an overall positive situation to be able to be in different environments and different training programs and different training experiences than maybe, we're used to doing here in Alexandria.
Can I ask, Tommy was just talking about when they took the initial Brazil trip, they started seeing futsal courts and like what we've now tried to replicate in Alexandria, but different ways that people play. So I also noticed, like, I loved watching the teenagers from girls in Malmo, like, travel to practice on their bikes and then have, their clubhouse with their picnics. What was something, if anything, that stood out culturally that's like soccer specific, but very different or kind of different to how we do things here with kids going to Witter, if you say?
Right. Yeah, I think we were able to experience that more in Sweden than maybe in Portugal. In Sweden, same thing that you said, like the girls come from really far away, which I know we have girls, coming from Maryland and different parts of Virginia, but some of them travel like hours to get to practices because there isn't another club within their community. So I think that's also a different aspect too, of that they're willing to like not only go close with riding their bikes, but travel like 2 hours just to be able to play for a club that they want to play with. And in Portugal, we had like buses driving us around, but that was more so because it was a tournament and that's what the tournament offered. So we didn't really get to experience like their true club aspect, I guess, as much in Portugal.
Yeah. How was the tournament experience?
I really enjoyed it as a coach. I thought it was awesome. And the girls, I think, were able to really get into it because it was more like competitive, I think, than just acting like, oh, it's just it's just a scrimmage. It was more like a competitive style, which I think was beneficial for them as well.
Anytime a trophy's on the line.
I know.
Awesome. You have anything for Anna?
Well, I would just, ask when the players come back, right? Obviously, the international trip is, we can't really replicate the amount of time that they spend with the coach, with each other, and then around the sport. There's such a concentrated amount of time. Did you notice an increased, outside the obvious, assumed connection with each other, but passion for the sport or kind of appreciation for, all the differences, really? Because I think we often talk about, some of the the points of topic here. What league are you in, or what is this facility like, or what are the differentiators between clubs, and then you go abroad and like none of that is
Right.
is there. Just can you share a little bit about like what you observe when the kids come back, and parents too, because obviously we support parents joining as chaperones.
I know it impacts them, I think, in a lot of ways, but I think like a lot of them still even will talk about, the interactions that they had with some of the girls. And I think that is like sometimes like, which obviously they're doing it for the soccer aspect, but that's the biggest part too, is just those connections that they're making with those people abroad and the people that are their age, but experiencing kind of like a completely different world. And I know a lot of them are friends on Instagram and Snapchat and kind of still keep up with some of them with just small things. So I think they would talk about, oh, like, remember we did this picnic and we did this dance move and we were doing these TikTok, whatever it is that they relate to at this age. But I think that's kind of what I hear. Like, they don't really talk about the competition or like how, tough or whatever it was, but more of like the bonds and the connections that they made while they were over there.
I remember seeing a big circle of one of the Swedish teams you played, and the ASA girls dancing, and they were like mirroring each other and like recording it for TikTok. And I remember being like, yep, transcends.
Yeah. And I know it because I feel like they maybe assume like, oh, we're so different, we're in different countries and different parts of the world. But then it comes down to it, they're still a teenage girl that all like the same things and probably interested in a lot of the same things, just in different languages.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anna, thank you so much for stopping by. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
2 more questions. We are going back to Sweden and Portugal. So what's your favorite trip out of the two?
I think I have to say the Sweden trip was definitely my favorite of the two. But again, Pedro, you've just done it so many times. It's a well-oiled machine at this point.
Yeah.
You could close your eyes and everything would fall into place. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to ask the girls to send the messages again this year to requesting you to go on the trip?
I did not. I plead the fifth. It was not me. I had no control.
All right. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. See ya. All right. Welcome, Jack. You are our second guest today. We are chatting international trips, the history of, the future of, all of our goals. I want you to introduce yourself because you have a lot of connection to ASA. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're related to ASA, and then we're going to jump into the very first ASA trip ever, which you were on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you, Katie, for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be on. For those that don't know me, my name is Jack Granger. I was a former player here at ASA for many years, and now I'm an academy coach. Also very heavily involved on the goalkeeper side of things, working closely with Jonah, Nick Conclue.
Yeah.
So I do about half. Currently, I'm with the 2008 boys blue team, and then I do about half my goalkeeper training with the academy side, all the way from U9, U10, all the way to the oldest MLS boys. So
wow. So you're busy.
A lot of different areas, but very busy every week on a lot of different fields.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
So the first trip we took with kids was to Brazil, which we established was 2015?
2015.
Do you remember, how did you decide to go on that trip? ASA had never run a trip. Did your parents ask you, or did Tommy say, do you want to go to Brazil? Yeah. How'd you end up on it?
Well, first of all, Pedro and I were talking recently at a field. This summer, 2025 summer, it'll be 10 years since that trip, which is
we got to do a reunion.
Reunion trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, a reunion. But yeah, I think Tommy organized it kind of a lot. Sent out an email just to kind of my whole team to just kind of gauge who's interested, whatnot. But yeah, I believe it was about 3 or 4 from my team. And then there was a big group of older kids as well. and some younger kids as well. So yeah, it was about, I don't know how many would you say, Tommy, like 20-ish
Yep.
kids maybe
Yep.
around then. Um, so yeah, we kind of divided the group up. It was an older team and then a younger team. So yeah, we did, I don't know, 2 futsal tournaments there. We played at least 5 outdoor games maybe,
Oh my God.
maybe more.
We were just talking about this. Do you remember exactly which cities did we go to?
Yeah, so we flew to Sao Paulo, and then we flew to Belo Horizonte.
Yeah.
Got the pronunciation
Guys
right.
got it.
That was
He's
good.
got
Good
it.
one. That's my hometown, man, by the way.
Yeah, we spent, I don't know, 4 days there, 5 days maybe.
Yeah.
And yeah, did a futsal tournament. We went to the flag behind you, Pedro
Yeah,
Cruzeiro
yeah.
Zero.
facility, which was a lot of fun. And then we went to Rio, which we probably spent the majority of our time.
So you're
In
right.
a very
2
nice
cities,
hotel, very close to the
Copacabana.
Copacabana beach.
Yeah.
So spent a lot of days there on the beach. Yeah, we went to a Flamengo game at the Maracanã.
Good memory.
We
Wow.
went
Yeah.
to where else we go? We went
Heck
up in
of
the
a lineup.
mountains. It was called the
Yeah,
Teresópolis,
Teresópolis, yeah.
to the Brazilian National Team Training Center.
Yeah. Wow,
Wow.
that was a full package for that trip.
That was
Yeah.
the only trip
Yeah.
like that.
Wow.
Well,
Where else? Went to the Flamengo. Remember that, Tommy? The
Yeah.
Flamengo Training Center.
the old
Yeah,
stadium.
we play a game
The
at
old
Gavia.
stadium.
Yeah, we play at Flamengo. Yeah, and there was like a just renewed because of the World Cup. The Netherlands, they stayed there training as a base camp for the World Cup. Yeah, that's I remember.
Yeah, that was a beautiful field with a nice locker room.
Yeah,
And we went to Christ the Redeemer.
Price.
in the
Yeah, it
back
was
one
a
as well,
beautiful.
the
Yeah, I
mountain.
still remember that day. Yeah.
One of the best fields. One of the
So
best
you
fields
you
ever.
remember every
Yeah,
detail. See?
yeah, that's that's what it's all about.
It's all about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Amazing.
So,
Yeah, for any. Go ahead, Katie.
no, I love this is actually incredibly helpful because they were kind of brainstorming and couldn't remember whether that trip went to 2 or 3 cities. So it clearly was impactful, right? In how you can recall it and all the experiences you had. When you think about like, if somebody, a kid today was like, I'm a little nervous. I don't speak the language. Like, Coach Jack, would you recommend going on a trip? Like, what do you tell a kid other than just like, yeah, go, it'll be great? Like, what can you say to them to say like, actually, yes, this will be a really impactful experience as it was for me?
All right. Well, yeah, I would say, first of all, 1,000% go on one of these trips. Yeah, when I think about the trips I've been on, it's probably the most fun trip I've been on. But I would say just to experience a different culture, first of all, a different way of life, football, the way it's coached, is completely different. So yeah, I think that's helped me a lot to appreciate the game more, to study new languages, as I'm in the process right now studying Spanish, and then eventually in the future I'd love to learn Portuguese as well. But yeah, it's just the culture, first of all,
Yeah.
I would say, to just learn what it's like. Alexandria, you got a perfect turf fields 3 times a week. Some of these kids, it's a little different way of life. So I think it's good, especially at a young age, to kind of understand that. So yeah.
I love that kind of recognition of kids your same age are doing similar things to you, but in an entirely different culture and way, and experiencing soccer just different than you are. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, Jack, I would like to hear from you. Being a coach now, how much that trip impact you today as a coach, not as a player? You already mentioned your experience, how much you gain as a player, but today as a coach, being able to go overseas as a player, how much impact does that have on you today?
Yeah, I think it's had a lot of impact, again, to learn different cultures, see different coaches, and just to be open to new ideas today. I'm still a very young coach and had a lot to learn. So I think it's good for coaches to always keep an open mind and, not just say this is the Alexandria style and we have to play this way. Just be open and keep an open mind always to, yeah.
Sounds like we might need to organize a goalkeeper trip.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I have a kind of technical question. You mentioned that there were older players and younger players, and split the group up. I know that's one thing with international programs. That's one of the most difficult things is to
the biggest challenge that we have. Yeah.
arrange appropriate level competition, and that's something Pedro does an amazing job at customizing versus doing kind of a big box out of the experience. So having older players and younger players versus going just with your team, can you just share how, if at all, did that impact your experience positively, negatively, or can you just share that variable? Because I know that's one of the biggest questions we get is only 2 or 3 of the players on my team are interested.
Right.
How does that feel for a player?
Yeah, I think it's definitely different, especially for my group. We kind of all started together from U9, U10. We're all kind of played all the way up to U19. So I think it was good to meet new players now, and I think it's today as well. You see the fluctuation of different teams and kids moving. I think it's good for them to obviously just meet new kids and just discover different types of players instead of sticking with the same team for I don't know. I mean, during my time it might have been 10 close to 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think every player is different. So I think getting as many ASA kids to know as many different ASA kids as possible.
Yeah.
I think you see now some teams kind of stay in their groups and kind of don't branch out. So I think it's good to, play with, you saw last summer, like Josh, 2007, playing with 2010 with Pedro's son, Gabriel, which I don't think would ever happen, So I think just meeting new kids, different types of players, it doesn't hurt. It always helps. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Jack, thank you for joining us and sharing in a little bit and literally helping us remember what that first trip was like. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jack.
Thank
for
you
taking
guys.
the time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
All right, Jack. Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
All right. Well, thank you to Jack and Anna for sharing their experiences. I just wanted to touch on a couple more things just so, the listeners get a very clear picture. We've talked about the history a little bit, how you came to be here, Pedro. We brought our international department back to Alexandria. Walk us through what a trip is like. Kids generally meet at Dulles or recently BWI. They get on a plane and they arrive in the country.
Yeah,
What
that's
happens?
actually a funny question. So I got to give a funny answer. Like the trips are so different, but the format, it's very similar. So, I mean, let me try to explain that and rephrase that in a different way. Is that, destinations obviously are different, and the teams that we face are different. The country is different. The food is different. The language is different. But the format is very similar. So that's one of the reasons that we like to run our own trips, that we have 100% control of all the decisions that are made in the trip. But what I'm trying to say here is that we do have soccer pretty much every day. Could be a training, could be a game, could be a clinic, could be a museum, like a stadium tour museum kind of stuff. Could be a visit, like a training center, watching a combined session or watching a pro team training. But that's just a part of the day. You know, we do not spend the whole day, you know, just sitting on on those gigantic tournaments when you have a game in the morning and you have a game in the evening, and you spend the whole day doing nothing. That's not our trips. What we like to do is to take advantage of being overseas, being abroad, and besides adding some soccer related aspect, but also get to know the place. And something that we do quite often, actually, it's when we have like a game, a friendly or training session, we stay together with the other team to kind of get to know the players. And sometimes we do sightseeing with them. That happen in a lot of our trips. You know, we play, we train, and after this we leave to, you know, just like have an ice cream or to visit or go to one of the sightseeings that the city might offer. But if the teams cannot join us, we can do that on our own. So we do a lot of sightseeing every single day. We got to do something so the kids, so our players can actually learn something. You know, could be get to know some place, or, you know, just try some different food, or in something we try to add in every single trip is also, you know, you got to learn something. You got to learn a word from that.
Orienteering.
Orienteering,
in Sweden.
something very unique in Sweden. You know, we do not have some of
us got lost
some of the adults got
some
lost.
didn't.
I'm not going to say who, but
Someone.
Yeah. But that's a typical, you know, example of what we like to do. You know, that's why we like to run our own trips, so we can actually start adding this, you know, customization. It's very important for us because, you know, we know who knows better in our place than ourselves. So that's we know our community, we know our family, so we can actually customize our trip that's going to be perfect for that specific group.
I think. And so it's clear, if people don't know, the trips are generally for specific age groups. We kind of plan it, and then you can plan the competition. And we also invite chaperones. So oftentimes, I mean, there are parents at the club who have been on multiple trips over the years because, you know, they've enjoyed traveling with ASA.
This is something that I always mention on the pre-trip meetings, because the chaperones, you know, it's not mandatory. They don't have to join the trip. The kids can come on their own, but they are more than welcome to do it. And some of them try. Sometimes they've talked to me and they say, I'm not going to the trip because I don't want to work, because that's something they usually on the domestic trip. You know, from driving vans, setting up meals. This is very usual for like the especially for the soccer moms in the States to do that all the time, you know. But that's not the case on the international trips, because one of the reasons is because everything is pretty much set. You know, we already have everything, every single piece of the ticket, the trip's already arranged for that. So there's not much really left for the chaperones in terms of working load. So they have time to enjoy, and that happens. A lot of families take those trips to enjoy them. You know, they don't need to be in every training session, every game. Sometimes they, you know what, I'm already in Sweden and in Portugal. I'm just going to go to the museum. I'm going to. They are able to do their own stuff. That happened every single trip. We have families join the trip, but, you know, being able to do their own stuff.
So I think it's clear from our own experiences, from Jack, from Anna, that there are a lot of ways these trips are impactful. And I think even hearing about, you know, why it was important to you to start them and that initial coaching trip, why you found it valuable. What do you see as the reason ASA keeps running it? Why do you want to offer these every year?
Well, honestly, like almost, you know, all of our programs at the club, it was, you know, people communicating with us as well, you know, within our community, that it's something that they would like for us to consider doing. I think we hear from folks who go, as you just heard, you know, from a couple people, that they really appreciate that aspect, and that because Pedro runs them, you know, in-house, it feels like an extension of their annual experience. And, you know, I think for us, the future of the program, you know, I think the trips piece of the program is just one aspect. You know, Pedro just had 2 professional UEFA coaches here last week, you know, who came and ran sessions.
From Portugal?
Yep, from Portugal. And one thing that, you know, I think folks probably are like, wow, like, you all really have gone, all over, right? How does that happen? Well, Pedro mentioned his global network, over his many years of working in the industry is literally in every, country and continent. So I think that's what gives us confidence to keep opening new doors, trying new places. We have aspirations to go to Australia, and New Zealand,
Africa.
I think we've talked about, kind of spreading our wings and opening doors to new, experiences beyond Europe and beyond, South America. But again, beyond the trips, I think we see the opportunity, and we have actually, some of our coaches are directly from our interactions with the international
our Brazilians.
Program. Felipe, who coaches in our Access for All program, who coaches in Junior Academy, and he obviously coaches some of the most advanced boys and men's teams. He was a professional coach at Cruzeiro who coached players, ASA players in Brazil, and loved our community so much that eventually it made sense for him to join us. That's a big initiative of ours, is to continue to have an international, Alexandria is a very culturally diverse community. And for us to just stay within our city boundaries and think within our city boundaries, I think is a disservice. So, so we are already talking about bringing teams here so that kids from other countries can experience our community, and so we can play host in the same way that other countries have played host for us. So those are big, aspirations. Obviously, they take a lot of resources, time, energy, money, but it's something that our club is fully committed to. So hopefully in 10 years, this podcast will have us back, and we can talk about some of the other ways that the international program has impacted the experience for our club players.
Yeah, we'll just add the residential program. We have sent individuals overseas for weeks and semesters, and so this is another thing that we have offer. Of course, it's not as big as the trips because it doesn't involve that many players, but it is another piece of that international program. Just adding to what that Tommy just said.
Yeah, I think we've had 2 podcasts so far, but like any program, these are themes from both of those that I think we continue to share, is like, if people have ideas or want to do something or know somebody and can bring a team or want to take kids on a trip, like, we love that and are always open to making it happen, exploring ways to support our community, our kids' experiences.
It's a great point, by the way. We've had parents who have connections to specific clubs or even not non-related to soccer, right? Where we've gone to certain Alexandria families, like Sister City or hometowns, and the mayor presented us.
It's Alexandria Sister City.
Well, I remember we were driving in rural Italy, and the mayor or the city.
Alexandria.
It was Alexandria.
Yeah,
okay, it was another Alexandria.
Yeah.
So I guess that was coordinated. And we got like a special VIP tour. I think again we're a global club. We have families from all over the world that play, and so I think we feel like we've just kind of scratched the surface with the opportunities. And I also would say that historically we have supported the most advanced or most comprehensive players and teams within the club. But I think one thing that we've talked about is there's a lot of players who are just being introduced to the game, but would love to experience an international trip and the culture around it, but maybe are just beginner players.
Yeah.
If there's a kind of a demand for that, we would love to support that, because I think, the training and competition aspect of it can be, adjusted based on the level of player to have more introductory level clinics and more introductory level competition, because that exists all over the world. I mean, there's introductory players in every country as there are advanced, just like us. So we definitely we don't want this program to only serve, a subset of our community.
Perfect.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, anything you want to leave us with? Any teasers for next year?
Well, I would say the next summer, we're going back to
this is projected. The projected
2025
countries.
lineup.
Yeah.
Drum roll, please.
Yeah. We are going back to Portugal and Sweden. Again,
Excellent.
And Sweden and Denmark. And we are going to add 2 new destinations, Switzerland and Iceland. So just stay tuned for the registration. It should be coming out very soon.
Okay.
Yeah, those are beautiful countries.
Yeah.
And already, Pedro shared with me some of the pro club connections. There's some amazing opportunities. Iceland is a developing, footballing soccer nation, and who is giving great access to, teams and players who are coming over from the tournament aspect of it, but also their infrastructure around the game has really improved, and they're so close by the way.
Yeah.
Short flight.
Yeah,
Switzerland, has the Euros.
Yeah, I just want to double stress that Tommy just said. This is open to everyone. So this is something that I feel like sometimes some of the families feel like, just because we are going overseas, it's like only the top players that can go. That's definitely not the case. That's another reason why we run that our trips, because we can make sure we're going to have the appropriate kind of competition. We're going to face teams that it's going to be feed to our what is the level of the teams that we're taking overseas, so we can match that and make sure we are facing exactly the same level. We don't want to, face different levels on the trip. That's for sure. Yeah,
and you mentioned it's for everyone. I think one of our, the reality is the international trip involves an international flight. It involves, 24/7, care, right?
Support.
Food, lodging, et cetera. It becomes very expensive very quickly. So, one thing that we recognize is obviously not all families have the bandwidth to afford an international trip. In our commitment to ensuring that all of our programs are accessible, we would like to have an initiative that obviously makes it more accessible, not only by soliciting support from our community, but we are in part of the reason why we invite players at this time of the year is so that many of them are of middle school and high school age. There's an opportunity for players to work in the club to pay off their trip, whether it's refereeing or junior coaching or
site coordinating.
All
last weekend.
Yes, we just hosted a big tournament, and we have site coordinators. So
futsal season is right on the corner.
The futsal league, and the futsal season. We welcome folks to get involved in that way. Not only is it job training, not only is it an opportunity to learn in itself, it is an opportunity to generate a lot of money to help pay for these trips. We also offer some, and are going to be rolling out some creative fundraising ideas so that folks can offset the cost of their trip. But I think ultimately all of those things are going to be an effort to remove the barriers to this trip so more can access it. So appreciate that effort of Pedro's as well, and making sure the trips are amazing for everybody.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. Having been on one, kind of 2 trips, crashed a little bit. I swung through the England trip.
That's true.
I think I want to just echo as we wrap up, or the last thing I'll leave you with, what I think both Jack and Anna said is that traveling somewhere with maybe some of your teammates, but then other kids from the club, other kids from your age groups related that you maybe don't spend all your time with, is almost one of the most impactful and special things. I've watched kids from all different teams in an age group bond in a different community, in a different culture, like have that shared experience and verbalize at the end. Like I was a little bit nervous about how we would all get along, and this is really special, and I can't wait to hang out with you all back in Alexandria. And so, you know, the trips kind of facilitated that for them and brought that experience there.
You actually went to 3 trips. You went to England, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
France! I forgot.
And Sweden, yeah.
Oh.
You crashed in 2.
I was on my honeymoon and
Yeah.
swung
Wow.
through an ASA.
Wow.
I forgot that one. All right.
Amazing.
That's it. Thank you all.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you very
Peter.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks for
appreciate it.
coming.